What did you trade?
I had always traded all kinds of things on the phone. So I had other positions on while I was in the pit, from anything from soybeans to, gold, silver. And then when I wanted, in 1987, after the stock market crashed, the S&P got very quiet. And while that was still my home and I traded there every day, the S&P opened at 8:30, the currencies opened at 7:20. So I spent the first hour and a half trading currencies in the pit in the morning, and then went down to the S&P. And then later on, when they opened the NASDAQ pit, I was in that pit for a couple of years. That was the craziest pit I was ever in, bar none. A good friend of mine was trading currencies, and I had said to him, you should come down. We're opening this NASDAQ. Come on down. You'll be one of the guys. And then I made a joke, and I went, if it ever gets great, I'll come stand next to you. The S&P was super busy, and I had one of my best days. I think I made $60,000 or $70,000, something like that. Called him after work. I'm like, how'd you do? He's like, I made 350,000. I go, did you have an error? No, I just scalped it. I went, you scalped $350,000. Uh-huh. The same thing happened on Tuesday. Similar numbers, give or take, whatever. And that was that. On Wednesday, I was standing next to him, just like I said. I knew that the S&P was good, and it was good money, and it was what I knew. But I also knew that, the NASDAQ was a similar thing, and I wasn't in the S&P for the very beginning. But it was also a pit in the NASDAQ. What was unusual is guys shared trades all the time, not because they were kind, because it was so risky. Like if you had to take 20 to get into a trade, you wanted to lay off 10 to 15 as fast as you could. So it'd be like, you would work with other guys, and that happened a lot in that pit. But I've a lot of people went from the S&P to the NASDAQ. A lot of people came from the currencies to the NASDAQ, but that became like a really wild pit. It was a lot of fun.
Is it true that a trader had a strategy using pagers to get information on the floor?
I wouldn't call that a strategy. I would call that stealing, but, to each their own. But yes, that's 100% sure. Not sure, I don't want to say 100% what firm it was, but it was one of the big firms. It was Goldman or Solomon, one of those giant firms. And one of the guys at the desk had made a deal with a guy in the pit, and he had two beepers, one in his left pocket and one in his right. And if one side went off, he'd buy the market. And if one side went off, he'd sell the market. Up until finding that out, which ultimately everyone did, I thought this guy was one of the greatest traders I had ever seen. I mean, I saw the NASDAQ double limit down with everyone terrified, and this guy buys like 200 contracts and made $5 million so fast your eyes would spin. And I'm like thinking, Jesus, what guts, for lack of a better word, what balls. And no, it wasn't that at all. It was Goldman about to take the market off limit down right before he bought, right after he bought his trade. So yeah, I mean, and one of the reasons we all know that became factual, not like rumor, is he actually, before he got in trouble, sold the beepers to another local. It's almost like inside trading in Congress. I don't think the exchange knew what to do with it. I don't think anyone knew what to do with it. They knew what to do if an order filler said, hey, I've got a bunch to buy or a bunch to sell. Major violation, you're suspended. What, this guy has beepers in his pocket? Who is he talking to? What's happening? I think by the time the exchange figured it out, it was done. But he quietly left, and I never saw anybody make that much money and quietly leave. They kind of stick around for a while. I don't like stories like that because it does paint us in a negative way, and I think some of the most honorable men I ever met were at the exchanges. I mean, our word was our bond completely.
What was pit justice like?
I don't think anybody would argue. We weren't saints. We weren't angels. We didn't have some moral code better than anyone's, but we had an old-fashioned forced honesty system. I thought I traded with you. You traded with somebody else. Now my position that I thought I was in or out of is either a big winner or a big loser. Okay, we had an error and I just lost $4,000. And now I'm in the break room and I'm having a Diet Coke and I go, I just lost $4,000. This idiot over there. And the guy next to me goes, I lost $6,000 to him yesterday. And the guy behind him goes, are you kidding me? And then a couple things would happen. As locals, we would absolutely just stop trading with them. Done. It's like everybody makes a mistake, but not every day and not with various different people in different points in the pit. Not to mention, you tell the order fillers that and they might have a tendency to overhit them on something. And, if he bids or offers on a little too many to look like a big shot or a real trader, The pit would take care of that awfully quick. What I always find interesting is when you talk about mistakes and things like that, I got to see the last two sides of the floor, and probably the first 18 years on the floor. If there was a mistake, you shook hands and split it. I mean, sorry. And there were other ways to work it out with brokers. Maybe what do they call trading nations? They most favored nation. You become most favored local, and you get all the trades if you're taking an error. But it was, then they put in the cameras, like these great cameras that could literally see the ridges on our finger. But that turned us into a bunch of crybabies. So you would end up going in the camera room when a mistake was made, and you'd be like, no, look at your pinky. No, your pinky looks like it was over here. No, look at your, it looks like you were signaling to me. And everybody was fighting instead of just assuming, you're honest, I'm honest, we're splitting it. That turned it into whose fault is it now, which was kind of a forbearance on technology, really. What's the truth now? Give me a subject and I'll give you 20 articles that contradict each other. So that's pretty much what the cameras did. I'm a big believer that the markets lead the way in society. They kind of tell us where we're going, even socially.
Did you participate in the exchange governance?
I was on many committees, pit committees, vice president of pit committees, business conduct, and any committee I could get on. When your dad's vice chairman of the exchange and you're his son, what's your goal? Chairman. I then found a few things out about how things worked, and it occurred to me that I was not ready, nor may I ever be ready. So that it was quite interesting. We have a nominating committee for each division, and the nominating committee decides who the best people to run the exchange should be. If you got the most votes in your division, you're now chairman of the nominating committee. So I got that a couple of times. And really, I always say, I think that was more because my dad was a super nice guy and I never made any real enemies. So it was easy to vote for me. After meeting with 8 or 9 guys to see, who should we recommend to run, I got 4 calls from the 4 most powerful individuals at the Mercantile Exchange over the course of about 2 hours. Hey, kiddo, wow, you're chairman of the nominating committee. You got to nominate yourself. I'm like, isn't that a bit hypocritical? I'm going to say, hey, I've talked to all these guys, and you know who the best guy is? Me. And I thought that was crazy. By the 3rd guy, he was like, no, we do it. It's fine. Go ahead. They were almost kind of convincing me. The little like, hey, Dad, are you proud of me? I gave him a call, and I told him all this. And he said, come on over, let's have a drink. And I went over to his house, and we're having a drink. And he says, please don't do it. And I'm like, why? I go, I have time. I have this. He goes, no. He goes, you're missing what's happening here. And he was on the board for a dozen years. He understood the exchange very well. And he said, these 4 guys were all at your bar mitzvah. They all like you. You like them, and it's great. And I'm proud of you. But you're imagining in your head that those 4 guys are a team, and you're going to go play for their team. And in fact, they're 4 really individually powerful men. And within 6 months of being on the board, you're going to vote against 1, 2, 3, or 4 of them at one point. And you will turn powerful allies into potential enemies. He said, you would be great at it. I would love to see you on the board. You have to wait till you have way more money. He said, that was my mistake. I didn't have enough money when I went on the board. Would I have pursued it had the Merc stayed the Merc and floor trading stayed the same? Oh, yeah, that would have been a dream. A dream and an honor to be on the board of governors, one I always wanted. But, then the pits went away, and it almost seems like the guys that were the governors when we left the floor are still there because, and no disrespect to them, nobody votes. So it's pretty easy to stay on now that you're on. And so it doesn't change that much.